And three, two, one, boom. And we're back with another episode of Scrap Gamers. You're probably thinking like, hey, I thought you guys stopped this bad boy last week, but here we are again, back and better than ever. We were just like joking about how if like UFC fighters, they retire all the time and then they come back. It's kind of like what we did, but we like revamped it. Actually, there's a UFC fighter fighting tonight, Vish. He's called Jorge Masvidal. And like he's like the Mexican Jesus. I think that's what he called himself. Okay. So his whole thing right now is called like the Resurrection. So like he left. He was like dominating in the UFC. He left.
Okay.
To do like a reality TV show.
Okay.
And then he came back, and then he's like, "This is my resurrection."
Yeah, I was about to say it's like he died and
came back. Yeah. So essentially, like that's what this podcast is. But we came back as like the weekly roundup. So what is the weekly roundup? Basically, Vish and I just hang out because there was a bit of an outpour over us stopping the podcast, which was funny though because we were talking about this, and I was like, it's weird to think that because we're not stopping the whole like podcast version that's like in life, you know, because we're like chatting all the time, but like it like takes away the opportunity for other people who do listen to it to continue to listen to it. So it's like, okay, so instead of like giving us the hassle, like all the things we were saying last week are still true. It's like very difficult to put like the old podcast together. But since we game now, it's like we've split it into like this weekly check-in is really like the Socratic portion to like our gamer portion, which is like Twitch. Essentially, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to continue following along on Twitch, SocraticGamers.com, you'll find everything there. And make sure to pick up some stuff from our sponsors, Zenro Clothing Co. But yeah, so before this podcast, you were like on this call with your family, and I was like, and you were talking about like translating it in your own head. Can you just go over that?
Yeah, so like I don't know how it works, but like I guess because I lived in India for like when I was super young, but it like whenever they speak in the local language, it translates it like a translator would, but automatically in my head to English.
But so I was gonna ask, like, do you translate it? Do you intentionally translate it, or do you like understand what they're saying and then tell me about it, you have to translate it in your head? No,
I think it's like I don't. It depends on like I guess what is the language in your head, right?
True. Okay. Yeah. No. But see, people who are fluent in multiple languages, do they just keep reverting
I think
back?
so. I think it's your main language that it reverts to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was talking to someone about that too, and then that's what she said, that it's like they know multiple languages, but it always goes back to the main one that they know.
Interesting. Okay.
Even though they understand the other ones.
Because I found like the easiest way for me, like I'm not even close to as fluent as you are. Like when you're like, oh, I totally understand what they're saying. Like I understand, like it's like I'd say I have like a kindergarten level of understanding.
Right.
Like I can understand it, but like very basically.
Yeah.
Like my Filipino language. And like what I find is that it's easier for me not to translate it, but to like act on the action. Like these words bring about, or like these words bring about a visualization, not a translation.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? They'll say
yeah.
something and I'm like, I'm envisioning what it is they're telling me to do. I'm not like telling myself, I'm not translating and then doing. You know what I'm saying? Because I just feel like it's faster.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I don't have a difficult time understanding what you're exactly saying, but I can get it.
So like they'll say like a Filipino word that means like go get this.
Okay.
So then rather than
you see the action?
Yeah. So when they say it, I'm like, I can see myself going to get it. Okay. I'm not like, okay, he said that and it means go get this. Okay, let me go do it. Okay. Because it creates like an additional step. Okay. That's too slow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I just, or I kind of also think
maybe your mind is like is mainly visual mind, I guess.
Oh, so you think it's like it depends on what? Like, are you an auditory learner? A visual learner? Maybe, eh? Like, I've actually never understood that. Like, I don't understand how like languages really work in that way in like your brain. Yeah. And like, but also you can look at it sort of like these are just extra words you know now. So it's like it's all a part of English.
Yeah. But there's like,
you know what I'm saying?
I guess it because there are words that are not in English. So those are like the ones maybe those are the ones I don't
yeah.
understand.
And you were just saying like, oh, I didn't understand that word.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Maybe there's no actual translation for it in English.
Interesting. Interesting. Like so like when I was learning like yogic language, so like moksha and like samadhi and like all these words, I was like, there is no appropriate translation. There's close translations.
Yeah.
But it's like that's why they say you have to use the original word because it keeps the context, you know? Rather than like translating it and then it's like you kind of lose some of the messaging.
Yeah, or the exact meaning, and it'll be different versions of the same translation.
Totally, and right. It's sort of like the best example is like the word love, right? Because you can have like different, like you can love food, you can love another person, but it's not the same kind of love.
Yeah.
But like different languages have different like ways to say love.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I heard this once that like actually the English language is super limiting.
I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's like, and there's like so many contradictions. Like there's so many like ways you're supposed to say something, but then they or like write something I before E except after C and stuff like that. And you're like,
it's like
it there, bro.
There is that. I think even like grammar wise too, it's like the worst for grammar. Like there are other languages out there that are much more better to explain your situation.
Totally. Actually, in this book, I think it's Outliers. They were explaining why the Chinese people are better at math than we are, because you know like the stereotype like, oh, Chinese, you're good at math. It's the way they verbalize math in their language. So it's like, you know how we do like 9 times 5 equals 45, right? So it's like it's so hard to visualize that you're like 9 times 5, but when they say 9 times 5, when they say like 45, they go like 9 fives. Not 9 times 5. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to think like, what is 9 fives? And you add all 9 fives together. And like the way they've broken up the language makes it more conducive towards mathematics.
Right. Okay.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to say was like, I noticed that when you talk to your family, you put on a little bit of an accent in order, but I'm like, oh, that's for them to understand better.
I don't even know I'm doing it.
Yeah, you don't. No, you don't even know. I had to catch myself doing it. So when I went to the Philippines, I was like putting on an accent, and I was like, but I don't even speak this language. But it's like that's how they hear that word,
right?
You know what I'm saying? So like I was, so for example, when I was growing up, so KEY, like key, like put the key in the door, right? Key in the door. My dad goes like K. Okay. Put the K in the door.
Oh, okay.
So we'd make fun of him, but it's like those examples. You have to use their word because they don't understand.
Oh,
they're like,
I see.
What's a key? Like K. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the K in the door. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
And they're all, I read this somewhere, but they're like, when you talk to somebody from a different country and then you automatically think that they're slow because you're like, oh, you can't really speak English. But it's like, no, this person is way smarter than you because they have multiple languages they're trying to like sift through, you know?
Yeah, whenever I'm there, it's like, I always tell them to speak their language because it's just more, it's just more easier, more comfortable for them, and I can understand it. It's just, but I can only reply in English, but they can understand majority of English because it's pretty mixed over there too.
What about your brother? Like, can he?
I think it's the same, but he's a bit more like he would actually try to say some of the words, I guess.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed Ravi does that too.
Yeah.
He'll also like put on the accent for a word. But it's like, it's just more conducive to their understanding.
Right. Yeah.
Weird.
Like earlier, what you were saying, it reminded me of the movie Arrival.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Arrival. That was an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you gotta check that out. The movie's freaking so sick. It was like the foundation of language because they were trying to, with the aliens, they couldn't communicate, so they had to figure out what's the best way to like, what does this word mean in context to this? And then it showed you how like, what would it be like if 2 species didn't understand each other? How would they communicate?
Right.
You know, it is like fascinating, like how we build.
But it was like saying like, no, the language that you're learning, you do get like perspective change in some meaning. So that's kind of what it was trying to say as well.
That's so true, actually, because like, remember at the end when she learned the language, she was able to jump through space and time.
Yeah.
But it's like you like, obviously that's like a extreme example, but it's
Yeah.
like the love idea. You if you have one word for love, you can't differentiate between like loving a cheeseburger and loving someone else.
Yeah.
You know? But then like if you have a different way to like split it up,
Uh-huh.
you know, your perspective changes. Actually, that's funny because that brings into like marketing, because that's what we do all the time. We try and figure out what's the best language to like trigger something in you and make you like fulfill an action given the language, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like which would build a better picture in your mind for this product, like using the word soft or using the word like plushy.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, they mean the same
yeah.
thing, but it's like your perspective changes when you're like plushy and soft. Plushy things are soft, but if you just use soft, it's like so, you know what I mean? So like it's so wide ranging. You gotta like drill it down further by saying like plushy.
I think in marketing, I think it matters very much what you like. I can see that
framing.
Yeah, it's a framing thing. I can see that like Apple does a lot of that kind of thing.
Oh really? Like what?
I know like their choice of words or like their choice of like specific things how to describe
totally.
they are very particular about those sort of things.
Yeah, they are super particular, and that's why I love their advertising. Like when I watch it, it's so like innovative. Like even like when they reveal a product and they're showing like the textures of it or like the sleek design, it's like it's sending you subtle messages of what the product is like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's weird.
Language is a funny thing.
Yeah, totally. All right, so another thing I was thinking about, like we were talking about this yesterday, and it like blew my mind, is the voyeurism. So voyeurism is like when you're watching somebody without them knowing.
Yeah.
So you're like a peeping Tom. That's what like a voyeur is.
Yeah.
And then it got me. It was like tripping out because I was like, oh man, like us playing these games and this podcast. It's like it's essentially like a voyeuristic pursuit on the other end of the viewer watching. You know what I mean? Because like for us, we're like we would have these conversations anyways, and that's how the podcast started. It was just like we should just like capture what it is we're saying, because we're saying some innovative things. I always thought we were saying innovative things, and I thought it was cool, right? And then like, but then I never realized that like on the other end, you become like a product, you know?
Yeah, like an entity.
Yeah. You essentially lose your like anonymity and your individual. Like I guess you keep your individuality, but like your, I guess anonymity. Like we're not anonymous anymore. It's like you've like the framing thing. You've like associated who we are to these things that we do.
But it's not just. Yeah, but we're not. We're more than that. Like
we're like human too.
Yeah,
so it's like so we're still living lives. Like you get to hear the podcast and like check out stories and stuff, but it's like you're not like living the day-to-day experience of like who we are. And I think like you made a good point that not only through this podcast, but like other people do it too. Like that's what celebrityism is.
Yeah.
Like you never think. I remember. I think I brought this story up before, but when we went to Much Music and I saw Angels and Airwaves, you came too, and everyone was freaking out. It's like, oh, it's Tom DeLonge. He's a product,
yeah.
And I want to get a photo and stuff, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. I get to see Tom DeLonge in real life, and you were like just sitting there, like, okay. Like I guess maybe he didn't really mean anything to you.
Yeah.
So like
I got more of like a different perspective of it.
Totally. Yeah. So like for us who are in it, we're like, oh my God, it's this product we've never expected to experience in real life. But imagine his perspective. He's like, I'm living this life and now all these people love me. And it's like, what do you do with this?
Sometimes it goes to your head.
No, that's what I was going to say. You start feeling yourself too much and then you're like, oh, I'm important, you know? But it's like, are you important or are you just another human in the blip of time? You know, or when the media machine decides to kick you out. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, you're not important. You're not making money anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I noticed this, trying to relate it to this, but like if you keep seeing that every day, if that's the action that you keep seeing, like people cheering you on or whatnot, if you're doing these shows every day, you feel like you're top of the world, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And then that's your perspective of the world will happen. Like, so I see that with, like, I'm trying to compare it to like the internet or like Twitter, for instance. It's like if you only see negativity, you're just going to keep thinking negativity. If you only think like, if people you only see positivity, you're just gonna but it's both are bad in a way if it's only those two spectrums. Right. You're not getting the realistic, like you're Like it might come to you, shock to you when nobody cares about you anymore.
Totally, I 100% agree, and I always find this so fun. Like I was saying, that the people that are closest to us don't actually like look at what we're doing,
Yeah.
and I like that because like in that perspective, it's like they're not treating you like a product.
Yeah.
They're like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna tell me, just tell me in person. Bro.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to go listen to this thing.
Yeah.
You know. And I was also gonna say that I also like, I think tough love is super important. So like even though I'm getting stoked off of like, oh man, I completed this project, or like, oh I created this design, this ad, whatever, and my sister wants to be like, well, you think you're hot shit, bro? You're trash still. You got nothing. And I'm like, it sounds like negative on the outside, but it's like what you said, it's like you can't feel yourself too hard.
Yeah.
So it's like if I get super stoked over what I created, I need somebody to bring me down in order to be like, don't get full of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's still more work to be done, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like infinite amounts of work though.
Yeah.
It's funny. I got asked this. It's interesting that a lot of people don't really like think about these things, but I got asked this one question of like, oh, when do you know? How do you know what the right answer is? You know, in like everything. And I was like, if you guys read Nietzsche, well, they haven't read Nietzsche or heard of Nietzsche. But I was like, in Beyond Good and Evil, he explains like good and evil are ideas, and like history, you'll only know if it's good or evil 100 years in the future, like with their new laws. Like for example, like the Christian Crusades, right? It's like they were killing all these people in order to spread their like ideals.
Yeah, they thought they were doing the right
They thought
thing.
they were doing the right thing. So it's like at that moment in time, you're like, well, are we on the good side or bad side? Good side, obviously, we're fighting for God.
Yeah.
But then like 100 years later, or 1,000 years, I don't know, however long it was, we're now reading about that. We're like, oh, that's a messed up way to do it. That's what contributed to Western colonialism. You know, we're like, oh, that's terrible. But it's like, in that moment, they were good. So you're telling me they're bad now? So there is no such thing as good and evil.
Yeah.
Because it's always like ebb and flow. You
Yeah.
know, it depends on the group collective at the time. And when I said that, they were like mind blown. And I'm like, no, but this is how the world works. Like, what? Why are you mind blown, bro? You know, it's like basic information.
Yeah.
But like people don't, I think it's partly because like we get caught up in, so like, okay, speaking of like the protests right now and like systemic like racism, you know, and it's like I think we're all like, so okay, what is racism? Right? Racism is a stereotype,
Okay.
essentially, right?
Yeah.
And, right? And a stereotype is an inference, which is a guess. An inference is a guess. But we use inferences all the time in our lives. So it's like when you're like, oh, you should not be racist. But if you're not, all right, maybe they're talking about extreme racism, and I'm like breaking down this example too hard.
Yeah.
I just want you to like look at both sides. But like we use inferences. Like if I look at the street light and it's red, my inference, my guess is no car is going to stop. Right? I mean, all cars are going to stop. It's red.
Yeah.
And then you walk across the street, you get hit.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, it's red. You're supposed to stop. So it's like, but we need. Oh, maybe it's heuristics. Sorry, heuristics, not inferences. Inferences are guesses. Heuristics are like subjective guesses. They're like, they're stereotypes, essentially.
Okay. All right.
So anyways, so like we build our life off of that. So how can you say that, you know, like, am I racist towards the red light? I'm like, dude, red means stop. Then somebody tells me like, no, you should be open-minded, bro. And like, red might mean also go or slow down. Like, you never know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're trying to build that kind of world of like overly subjective. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that's a much more like a nuanced look at it. I think the thing is they just want the same, like within like policing, for instance, like they want the same treatment that's happening to everybody else. Right? I get it.
But what that is an upgrade. So
Yeah.
like how are heuristics built? Past experience.
Yeah.
So if the entire Western civilization was built off of like, you know, white people are powerful, and then now globalization's happening, and then people are like from different countries are coming in, it's like, well, you guys aren't as powerful as you thought because now we need inclusivity. So it's like you can't really blame them for like their past experience. That's how it was built for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like from then till now, all we really need is just an upgrade in the operating system.
Yeah.
That's
like
it,
yeah,
you know?
just that's what the upgrades and laws are for. That's what that is.
But we don't adapt our laws, and that's what we do, but at a slow rate. That's the issue.
Yeah,
Like, I think globalization and the internet have like caused us to evolve more rapidly in our minds. You know,
yeah,
like, so now
yeah.
we're like uber woke,
Hmm.
you know, but like being woke now has opened our eyes to like basically the red pill and the matrix, and we see all the injustices.
Hmm.
But it's like, okay, just like change them, but don't don't hate them, just change them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, because the more you fight for, what was that thing, Terry Crews?
Hmm.
Remember the he was
The
like,
Black Lives Better,
yeah, like
or yeah, Black Lives Better
he
versus
he.
Black
So
Lives.
the Terry Crews guy is like, I don't want this to become that,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, yeah, because let's say we do this, and then all of a sudden, white people are oppressed, you know, and then like the next 100 years, we build up a system that's like, oh, more melanin is better, and then like 100 years later, those
Hmm.
people, like the white people, are like, hey, we need our justice now, you know. And it's like a back and forth. But if you just like understand both perspectives, you can make a better decision, you know. But like, I
Hmm.
think people with like an agenda only educate themselves on the one agenda and not both sides of the argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't even look at history,
Hmm.
right? So like when I was explaining,
Well,
like
I mean, they're looking at history
from a
from
very
their.
like what point, like
Yeah.
earliest point, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, just move further back, and then move further back, and then move further back, and then it's like, oh, we all came from Africa.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we're all actually just one thing,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
We don't look that far back.
Yeah. That's one thing that I like looking far back is kind of like when I watched that the Human Journey or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That
Great
gave me
human
that
migration.
perspective, like, oh, we're all the same. Like we're
Totally,
all
yeah.
connected.
Totally. And it's like, totally, I agree. And it's weird because like when I hear like someone's belief system, if they're like, oh, I'm religious, I'm like, okay, so there's a cap. There's like, I can't open your mind past that because your belief is so rooted in this religious thing,
Hmm.
you know.
But even with all that, it's like when we say we're all connected, if you break it down just by topic, uh, like take care of family or like other things like that, almost everyone agrees to that same thing.
Yeah, yeah, basic human,
Doesn't matter
like,
if you're
love and
religious or not.
understanding.
It's always it comes down to those sort of things that
Totally, the things that make us human.
yeah,
Yeah,
and we're the same in that.
yeah, totally. Yeah, we are in the same that, but then people don't look at that, you know.
Hmm.
But circling back to the religious thing, so like in a major thing in Catholicism, that's how I was brought up, right? Like God made Adam and Eve, right? But like then we're just disregarding science because like the bonobos you were saying, like evolution, missing link, you know, all this stuff.
Hmm.
Like people, like when they tell me the religious, I'm like, okay, so that's you're like anti-science, you know.
But
Spiritual and religious are two different things, though. Spiritual is like higher. You're like you're observing life at a higher frequency.
mhm. But even the word religious, almost everyone has their own different kind of meaning to it too. Like how level of religious are they? Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
do
It's
they?
like subjective religious.
Yeah,
So it's like
it does
I'm
become
picking and
that
choosing.
because almost every single one would have a slightly different view of their own religion, of the main like
Yeah, totally. I agree. With
right.
you
Their
saying.
own perspective might be slightly different based on their subjective experiences.
Totally. Yeah.
So
And even each priest doesn't even agree with what the other one's saying. So it's like you're looking to your religious leader, and they're all freaking battling each other over meetings.
yeah,
You know, it's really weird. Like, not to knock it, I can say this because like I grew up Catholic, so I know what this is. I know what's going on. So like, it's weird to think that like we've created this whole economic and like societal system, aka religion, and like we dress ourselves up. Not we, but like like religious leaders dress themselves up in these like robes and stuff, and it's all just based off of like a book, you know. And
Mhm.
it's like it doesn't seem like it just seems like this was the story that caught the most fire, and we just built it off that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you look at Bikram, or if you look at like Osho, if Osho had continued and everyone believed him, we'd have the Church of Osho. Like Osho is the second coming of Jesus. You know what I mean? And then we just believe in him. But like it got stomped out because people were like, no, he's a cult leader. But what's the difference between a cult and a religion?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there will be still some followers of him. Sometimes these things, even like with the Jesus story, it's like it didn't happen right after he died. It happened 100 years later.
Because that's the thing, because we all forgot. There was enough time. Because if you actually look at the time when Jesus was, well, actually, if you even really get into it, it's like it's a Roman propaganda thing. So that's one issue. But like if you actually look at when Jesus was like around, they hated him. That's why they crucified him. Hello. You know what I mean? Just like Osho, it's like we're basically crucifying him right now with this Netflix documentary. But then 100 years later, people forget, and then we find this Osho book and we read it, and we're like, because Osho said a lot of good things. Like he's one of the top spiritual like leaders that I look to, because he's so unbiased. You know, well, he's biased, but like objectively unbiased. You know what I mean? Like he's always like arguing both sides,
right?
Or telling you how stupid something is. And like he also believes highly in Zen, so like I love that. But you know what I'm saying? And like somebody's gonna find the book and they're gonna be like, oh my god, this mystical being called Osho had so much wisdom and knowledge, you know? And it's like, but they hated him when he was alive.
No, maybe he might have their stuff he write down made more sense. Maybe some of his actions were a bit more questionable.
Yeah, but then it's like Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's like
so that's
you
what
don't actually know what happened with Jesus.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what is being related to, like current, because he's just recent, right? So
totally, yeah.
You know what is done, like it's been recorded or whatever.
Totally,
the actions that happened,
or even something like this, like with this podcast, we're recording this right now, right? So like it's going up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like let's say we die out 100 years later or 1,000 years later, these technologies still going. Somebody stumbles upon it and they're like, oh my god. These guys were so, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the same idea. It's just like people just stumbling upon something, feeling some sort of spiritual connection to it, and then deifying those people that spoke those words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, these aren't new words. That's the thing. It's like,
yeah, but we're still doing that. Like, we don't know everything about Socrates.
that's what I was about to say.
We don't know everything about Plato. Like, this is way far back that we don't have all the documents. A lot of them have been destroyed.
Exactly. Yeah. We just have like excerpts from it.
Yeah. And then we create a picture around that.
Yeah. We create a picture around the excerpt and we're like, oh my God, they're divine beings. He was so woke. But it's like, but you didn't know him on a daily basis. Actually, if you read his history, like if you read Plato.
But also like the one whoever translated that too is adding his perspective in.
That's true too, because it was written in Greek. So then it got translated into another language and then another language. And now we're in English.
Yeah.
So it's like, what did those authors adjust in their translation?
Yeah.
And I actually see this all the time, like when I was buying the Republic, because I was like, which copy do I buy? And then in the comments, they're like, oh, this translation was a terrible translation. I'm like, how would you know, bro? Like, did you personally go and translate it yourself? And you're like, oh, this is a terrible translation. Or are you just saying it because you didn't like the way the book was written?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, makes no sense to me.
But that's his opinion, right? That's what's going to...
Yeah.
That's how it spreads. Well, if everyone agrees to that opinion, but yeah. Yeah,
no, totally. I get what you're saying. Yeah, totally. Especially if he's like a renowned book reviewer and he's like, that's the crazy part about it all. It's like, so like, you know, in mathematics, if you can't prove one, do you get a bounce?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Last thought.
So I gotta get ready.
All right. Last thought. In mathematics, this is how I view when people say like, oh, all life is an illusion.
Yeah.
That's like a very spiritual thing that people say all the time, like all life is an illusion, especially the Buddhists. They're really into that. So like that actually makes sense because if you look at mathematics, like proofs, right? So like, you know, remember proofs in high school? It's like this equation equals this equation. And you have to prove that they're the same.
Yeah.
So like,
I hated that class.
Yeah, I hated that too. But if you can't show them to be both true, then it's not real.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, that's just like our experiences. So my experience is this, your experience is that. If they're not 100% in sync, it means that it's not real. Right? It's just subjective at that point.
Yeah.
We both believe ourselves to be real, our experience to be real, but at the end of the day, when you boil it down and you like mathematically observe it, it's like both experiences don't sync up, meaning that the experience had no real truth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how the entirety of life is. You know what I mean? Right? Because it's like, if everything's based off of our own subjective experience, then who's to say my subjective experience is wrong as opposed to yours?
Yeah.
Unless we're both wrong. And if we're both wrong, or we're both right, but if we're both right, it means we're both wrong. So essentially, it boils down to we're both wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it looked like you were going to say something. So I was like,
No, I mean, it's that's why it comes down to there's no right and wrong. Like
exactly. And there is, and that's why like all these spiritual teachers say all life is an illusion, because it's what you make it to be.
Yeah. Or all life is subjective. That's what that is.
Yeah. I prefer to say all life is an illusion because it's a deeper red pill, and it mind fucks everyone. They hear it, they're like, "Wait, what do you mean?" But you're like, "All life's subjective." Like, yeah, life is subjective. It's a very superficial, like
because I know it is
framing,
a soft way of
right?
saying it. It is framing, because then illusion has so many different connotations to it that they
I know.
might lose their mind. But if you say just say subjective, that is the most. That's why I said subjective, because this is, if I just break it down, the word of illusion, what you're saying is just a subjective. That's all you're saying.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm just saying it like you can. Again, it's wording, right? It's what words you're using, what you mean by it.
You know what's funny about that, 2 points of view? So like, I like doing that because it's more of a Zen koan. So like, Zen koans are meant to mind fuck you to the point you break your mind.
Right.
And if you break your mind, then you realize that there is no mind, right? So that's why I like to do that. But it's funny to like, you're like safeguarding it by being like subjective, because like, you don't.
No, I'm just putting it in. I'm just putting it in the most, I guess,
non-aggressive way.
Yeah.
I
like,
know, that's
why be so aggressive when you can just like really make it simple for people to understand?
But it makes the Zen.
So this was my thing with these sort of like old like stories or parables or whatever they were. Like, they don't exactly give you direct meaning. They give you a return, like a whole workaround about it. But then you get different perspectives of it. That's why I just go straight to the point, I know, because that's just how that's just how I was.
That's what was the word for that? You're very, like, when you distill something.
I don't know. Like
realistic. I forgot. I'll figure out the word, but it's like, it's essentially like where you boil something down to the point that you can't. Reductionist. You're very reductionist in that approach. Like, you don't want it to have any fat on the freaking like you want it to be to the bone, right? You don't want any meat, you don't want any fat. We're just gonna go straight to the point, right? But like, I find it funny because if you put a lot of fat, then you can confuse people, and it's like,
my point is that confusion is what causes problems.
Totally, I agree. Right,
that's why we have variety. Like, even within Christianity, you have like variations of it.
Totally,
so many of them,
sure.
Because you get people different perspective. If you get to the point, I think it'd be harder to get different variations of it.
Right, exactly. Until they try and translate subjective into a different language, and then you're
that's true.
What does subjective mean in our language? You know, and they have to like.
That's possible. Yeah. But then that's just what happened.
That's not my fault. I was trying to give the best that I could. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I'm only using the best word that I know from this language, right? Like that.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Like, if my language changes, I can't do anything about that.
It's not my fault. I was being as reductionist as possible. But people don't like that, though. People don't like reductionism. Like,
I think it's because it makes life boring, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So Brian Greene, he's a physicist, and his new book. Sorry, you gotta go.
I'm like a minute.
All right. Last minute. So Brian Greene, he wrote this book. I forgot the title. It's his latest book, and like, in it, he basically talks about all these spiritual things, but from a reduction. But he didn't say it was going to be this. Like, a lot of like physicists, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Greene, they're all actually like speaking yogic languages, and they're answering meaning of life questions, but they're doing it through science. So it's like ultra reductionist, right? So when you said it's boring, so it is boring because it takes the flavor out. But what he's arguing is that it actually adds more flavor, because now you're not being lost. You can look at the real,
that's my
right, you can look at the
I
real
totally agree with
majesty
that.
of the universe. It's like
Because I find that more fascinating.
exactly. That's
Like
exactly
to actually understanding it. That's what I find
totally.
more like fruitful. I don't know.
Totally. All right. Last example for it, because like this totally relates. So it's like acid, right? So like in acid, if you like, a lot of people are like, oh, I can see like molecules vibrating and stuff like that. But then if you actually look at like the science behind it, it creates like a delay in your visual receptors.
Yeah.
So if you understand it's creating delay, then you get over the fact that things are moving.
Yeah.
But you're not lost in the illusion.
I get it. I totally get it.
People are like, oh my god, I can see the molecules. Oh my god, I can see the earth moving.
Yeah.
There's so much vibration in the universe. And it's like, bro, no, there's a delay in your visual synapse right now because of the acid.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's
I forgot what I was going to say,
view.
but yeah.
That's a reductionist point of view.
Yeah.
And then people they're like, oh, that's no fun anymore, because you show the magic trick.
I think it's because it's innate in us to want stories.
Yeah. You know why?
So, yeah.
The reason why is because we want to shift blame. Because you don't want to take ownership over your own life.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
why you can't look at the most reductionist point of view. Because if you look at it, it's like, no, you're in charge of your own life. But it's like, no, I'm not, because God's guiding
you. Want to blame, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it with that. Any final thoughts on that one?
No. That's all.
All right. Good podcast. That was awesome. First episode back, weekly roundup. But we're starting at episode 56 because it sounds cooler. Hashtag framing. 156, sorry. Yeah, we're gonna do like a Hajime no Ippo watch, ideally, later. Or
let's see how the first episode goes. I don't know.
This one, or you mean the Hajime no?
No, I'm talking about Hajime no. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, okay. We'll just watch it. Yeah. Watch the first episode. We'll see if we like it.
Yeah. We'll stream that first one.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. So check us out, SocraticGamers.com, and pick up some teas and or accessories from Zenreal Clothing Co. Use code Socrates. It was SG Podcast before. That still works, but I think Socrates sounds cooler. You know, because we're doing SocraticGamers.com, so it's like just more general. Use code SG Podcast or Socrates at checkout for 20% off select items. Take it easy, fish. Good to be back.
Peace.